Hello everybody, I'm Alexa. How many ounces are in a pound? What you're about to hear is an episode recorded in early March about events that range as far back as last August. I considered calling it a bust given how many teething problems it had and how generally late it is, but given the current circumstances, 2.5 hours of recounted actual play, convention and convention-light experiences didn't seem like the worst thing to release for people struggling with not being able to go outside except to die for the economy and or yell at the government about racism. This was also Alex's last episode on the podcast before he was tragically killed in a freak editing procrastination accident. As per his wishes, I will be taking over his place in the Bards, along with his editing responsibilities, his social media accounts, his current projects, his bank account, his national insurance number, his postal address, and his place on the electoral roll. It's what he would have wanted. It seems weird to say, given how incredibly infrequent updates are, but after this, House of Bards is going to take a little break. Beth has a different podcast project she wants to try, and you'll be seeing a little of that sometime soon, hopefully. And for my part, I'm writing a tabletop RPG. Playtesting is a frequent fact of life right now while it's in its nascent stages, and I can't really shoulder editing on top of that. House of Bards isn't gone forever. We'll do an episode on my project at some point at the very least, and there's still other stuff to talk about. But for the moment, expect more in the way of Game of Bards streams and side projects than any more episodes of this show. If you'd like to know more about my project, search the hashtag TrackDogsRPG, all one word, on Twitter. Thank you for listening, and enjoy 2.5 hours of chat about QCon and Critter Castle from long ago. Love ya!
It's not my fault! It's not my fault! I didn't suck any dicks! Hi everyone, welcome back. Wow, sure is empty in here. Boy howdy, look at all the cobwebs. Welcome back to House of Bards. Ostensibly a podcast about role-playing games and the narrative power there within and the friends we make along the way, but it's actually more about the Scooby-Doo direct-to video movie.
No, shut up, stop talking! We'll have no more of that. Absolutely not. So this is just we're gonna do a sort of actual play convention tournament roundup thing, right?
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, maybe you're listening to us on the first time. Maybe this has popped up.
If you are doing that, don't start with this.
Don't start with this episode.
It's going to give you completely the wrong idea about what this podcast is about.
But for those of you who don't know, I am Beth.
Oh yeah.
We did not say our names. It's been a while. We're out of it. It's been a while.
Mm. And we are not alone. We have with us a guest. I bet you can't guess who it is.
It's me. It's Maxi. It's always Maxi at this point.
It's not. It's not always Maxi. We have had one other guest ever on the podcast. So we're gonna do a this is like the QCon episodes, but the QCon that I'm going to be talking about happened at the end of last August. So it's not just going to be about that. It's also going to be about the Critter Castle events. I think just the most recent one. Is that right? Because there's been more than one, and I know that the two of you have gone to more than one, but I think...
We call it Critter Castle. This is specifically about number 2 and 3. Probably a little bit less about 2, because it was a while ago now. It was like last August? Yes, because it was my birthday while I was there, so last August.
Okay. Do we want to do like an explanation that the two of you can do to me, because I did not go to this. What is Critter Castle for the uninitiated?
I would say it's not a meet-up, but it's not a convention. It's somewhere in between. There are more people than there would be at a meet-up, and it lasts longer than a meet-up. But also, you don't generally all stay in dorms with each other in Conventions, I don't know how one would describe it. Also, during conventions, you are normally responsible for feeding yourself. What are they called? I don't want to. It's not English Heritage, is it? Who runs the youth hostels in this country? It's very predictably the Youth Hostel Association. They often make breakfast for you if you stay in their youth hostels. They do like your full English breakfast, so it's very nice. It's a good time.
Well, how I would define Critter Castle is about 50 nerds who are fans of the famous show Critical Role decide to rent out like whole-scale youth hostels, which were like originally manor houses and castles and stuff like that, for on-site photography. And we dress up in cosplay, we play D&D. It's mostly Critical Role themed, but like I know that some other cosplaying has been happening, like Joe dressed up as Link from Legend of Zelda.
Yes, I remember someone, her name escapes me, but she dressed up as Howl from Howl's Moving Castle as well. I remember that one.
Yeah, so basically, just 50 nerds chilling out in a youth hostel, having a good time for the course of about 3 days, looking out for one another, cosplaying, playing D&D, and then we all go home to wherever we come from in the UK, or outside of the UK, because we've got a few people who are like from France, and I can't remember where Irene's from. I think it's Portugal.
So that's what Critter Castle is. So yeah, I definitely see the way that you're saying that it's more tight knit than a convention, but it's larger and more comprehensive than a meetup.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. I mean, you could maybe say that it was a mini-con, but in my experience, mini-conventions still have convention energy, just on a smaller scale, whereas this appears to be a bit more like a giant structured sleepover.
Yeah. You know what? It's like it's the year 11 ski trip. It's the trip.
It definitely sounded like when the two of you described it before. It definitely sounded like it had the same sort of energy as I didn't go on the year 11 ski trip. I went on the sixth form diving trip.
Ooh.
In Egypt.
Ooh.
Which was fucking great because we terrified our parents, given that the Arab Spring had just happened, and also that tourist had just been eaten by a shark in Sharm el Sheikh, which was where we were going.
Oh wow! My dad thought I died on my 11 ski trip. Just putting that out there. No, he genuinely thought I died. He got a call from the school and everything.
I did not go on the Irrelevant ski trip because I didn't want to pay 120 quid to be miserable for 3 days, surrounded by a bunch of people I hate, in a cold climate doing a sport that I am not skilled at, so I elected to stay at school for those 3 days, and you know what? It was really nice. Do you know why? Because there was fuck all anyone there. It was just you and it was just the kids who didn't want to go and the kids who were too poor to go. We all had a nice time. It was good. The class sizes were really small, and you know what? A school is better than fun, actually.
I mean, I enjoyed the diving trip, but I did also, get very violently sick on, the day that we were going to go back. And I was, constantly rushing to vomit on the plane, so that was fun.
So yeah, Critter Castle is definitely similar to that. But also, although a schedule of things that are going to be done throughout the day and, when lunches and dinners going to be had is drawn up before we go so that people are aware of what's going to happen, there's less of a teacher-enforced, you must take part in this thing or else, vibe to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right, because you're adults and you're doing stuff because you want to do it.
Yeah, if people, just want to, take a moment to rest up for a while because they're just, a number of us, are disabled and, have access needs and things like that, and they just need time to themselves. And so, I would be really, really upset if that wasn't allowed, but thankfully it is.
I spent pretty much of the most recent one. I had a really bad migraine on the Saturday, And I just spent basically all of Saturday until the banquet, like, asleep. And then I awoke, cleaned myself, did my makeup, and went to the banquet. And I was like, I feel good, actually. I feel nice, because I've been allowed to sleep all day. And I know for a fact if that had been a school trip... Are we just ragging on school trips right now? Anyway, if that had been a school trip, I'd have been dragged outside at the crack of dawn, in the fucking freezing cold.
It's true.
Surrounded by people I hate, and then at around noon they'd have sent me to bed, and I'd have slept for the rest of the day.
I mean, it definitely does actually sound like a group of adults, like, collectively doing a school trip together, but, like, only the fun bits.
Yeah, we went,
with more flexibility.
Hey, what if we all did a school trip, but it was nice, and we had fun?
It sounds rad, actually. Like, I have elected not to involve myself here because I'm not that big a fan of Critical Role. I've always attributed my, like, falling off the wagon to not having a second monitor anymore because I can't listen to Critical Role. I have to be able to see it at all times if I need to, because, like, mainly because there's, like, stuff like I can't tell Sam and Liam's voices apart, for instance, and there's too many players, so I, like, get confused about what's happening. As opposed to Taz, where I can just, like, listen to 4 people with very distinctive voices and largely follow along with what's going on. But also, like, I'm fucking poor, and there's not really any, like, means by which I could actually get to this stuff, especially if I'm doing QCon as well. So let's do a hard cut then. I guess I'm going to talk about QCon first, because the two of you said you didn't want to start.
Yeah.
So this was a while back at this point, but it wasn't as a while back as QCon would normally be. QCon was very late in the year in 2019, and I think that was for a number of reasons, one of which would be that how to put this? The Students' Union at Queen's Belfast is being torn down now. As we're recording this, it might actually have just been finished like a week or so ago, but it was condemned for a while. The building had asbestos in it. There's a lot of like consternation amongst the student body as to exactly how much of a problem that was, and how basically a lot of people very cynically view it as like a power grab by the university to replace the union with something that has less collective agency. Which, given that Queen's is a very neoliberal institution, is entirely possible, honestly. They're not like... There are red brick universities that are way worse for this kind of like vaguely authoritarian thinking than Queen's is, but Queen's itself is like not winning any prizes for like encouraging student freedom. There's also like weird things where obviously, unlike a lot of other universities, it's subject to some stricter laws regarding things like student speech and student research, because it's in Northern Ireland, where the terror laws are significantly stronger than in other parts of the UK. They're not as strong as sometimes the lecturers would have us believe. I remember having a couple of lecturers who very much enjoyed pretending that the staff body had complete and total access to and the ability to at any time read any emails that you sent from your student email account to determine the level of professionalism that you were doing. And if you are doing computer science or aerospace engineering at Queen's, they absolutely cannot do that. They can only hand over your emails to be opened by the police if you are determined to have been involved in terrorist activity. But they'll lie to you about it. I had like that was my like axe to grind as a student. I went all the way to the top on that one. I did like a survey and everything and found out that it was specifically those two like subjects where you would be told that was the case. So anyway, yes, because of that, because the union was off limits, that meant that there were venue concerns that year as to like how exactly everything was going to be fitted in. For tabletop stuff, that didn't actually matter that much because the South Dining Hall, I guess... This is weird. We weren't in that this time, which is odd. You'd think they'd keep people the same because that's where it had always been. But I think Ali, who has run RPGs at QCon for as long as I can remember, wanted it not to be there because it was difficult to find. So I actually don't really know why she would have resisted at that time when, because there was no centralized venue, everything would be difficult to find. And so it would be like, whatever. But we were in the temporary new union instead. We were like somewhere high in that building, I'm pretty sure. I think? No, we weren't. Where were we? We were in the Peter Froggatt building. That's right, isn't it, Maxi?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, which is in the main. If you look up Queens on Google Images, and you'll see this like big red brick edifice. It's in that, but the building that it is does not look like that. But it was fine because it was like, okay, this is a decently big building we have access to, and it's reasonably easy to find stuff, especially if you're looking for it at the ground floor. And you know, there was also like quite a lot of foot traffic into there anyway, because I'm pretty sure that's where John Romero was. That was wild for me to find out, by the way, that John Romero just lives in Galway now and does the con circuit in Ireland. But you know, that's cool. Mm. So yeah, we were up there, and I ran D&D 5th edition. And at the end, when everyone was gone and it was all packed up and whatever, I messaged Ali and I said, "This is the last time that I'm going to run D&D 5th edition at QCon. I'm probably going to go back to QCon, especially since a mutual friend has seemingly undertaken some significant trouble to get there from Portugal, despite our admonitions that it is really just like a local tier convention. It only has the reputation it does because Northern Ireland is not very populous and not very fun. So I feel like at least one of us should try and be there to meet her. I know that you were looking into that, Beth, but you had troubles, but I presume that Maxi is going.
I should be, yeah.
But if I go, I'm gonna GM, right? Here's the thing. I love QCon. I really do. And I really enjoy helping out there. I think I've got soppy like this at the end of one of these roundups, but it's really actually quite important to me that it's this... I think the thing that separates it from something like a Critter Castle, right, is that if you go to a Critter Castle, you are by and large all going to be fans of either this specific D&D show or tabletop gaming in general. And the thing about a larger convention like QCon is that you can have people come for something else. Because it's in the middle of the city, so it's reasonably accessible. And there's loads of other stuff going on. And people can just come and they can try out D&D or some other game like that. And I'm not going to run 5th edition anymore, even though I'm going to keep GMing at QCon if I can, for 2 reasons. First of all, it's fucking killing me. Genuinely, I get really ill just from the amount of prep work that I have to put into whatever weird, grandiose idea I've come up with at that time. So I'm not gonna. You all remember the 50 fucking character sheets meme because there's only 3 episodes back because we've not made What I did this time is simultaneously not as bad and worse. Right, I didn't do lots of character sheets, although I did do quite a few. But I did do we'll get into that because it's going to be the meat of what I say. The second reason is that I don't think, given the way the lay of the land is now, I don't think it is responsible of me to introduce people to the hobby through D&D anymore. Because that's easy to do, right? Because people have fucking heard of D&D. They know what it's like. But we're at a position now where Dungeons and Dragons it's all encompassing, right? And I've said before that I have ethical qualms about supporting it publicly. Not sufficiently so that I would stop running it entirely for my own fun or stop occasionally running it in public for other people's benefit, but enough that, for instance, I'm just going to pirate the source books. But I feel like I've been introduced to a lot of other different games, and I just feel that a lot of those games would be easier for me to run so that I don't kill myself trying to get this sorted out ahead of time. And also just a better introduction to what tabletop role-playing can be like. Because that's the other thing, is that I think before it was easy to... even as our audiences were increasing like this, it was easy to say that a lot of people who came wanting to try D&D had absolutely no experience of tabletop role-playing. And now I think so many people watch Critical Role and listen to the Adventure Zone and stuff like Acquisitions Incorporated and whatever. People know how to play D&D. It's not... You don't have to find a group or a convention or something to learn how to play D&D from actual play. Like, it's not... That isn't a problem. So I want to expose people to other different games. So my plan for this year is, if I have a beta ready, which I might or might not do, I will run Track Dogs, my Apocalypse World... Powered by the Apocalypse game. If not, I will pick something else to run. It could be Call of Cthulhu, it could be Traveller, it could be a Powered by the Apocalypse game of some sort. It could be one of the games that we've played on a game of Bards, for instance, or something like that. It could be, just something. Hell, I might even run Roll for Shoes, which is fun in its own way. And also, it probably won't end up being a big interconnected thing like I do for D&D, which means that I don't have to run the same thing all 3 times. That's fun. It's just... So the thing about D&D is, if you want to do something, large and well-constructed and interesting, you have to plan ahead for it meticulously. Even 5th edition, which is generally, allows more in the realm of, vaguer stuff, is still, compared to a Powered by the Apocalypse game or another story game thing, ridiculously complicated for this, to the point where what I have sitting in front of me are props that I used in this game. So do you want me to talk about what happened in these games, because there were 3 of them?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
by all means, go ahead.
So I scaled back to 3 games. Did I do that last time? What was the meme is 50 fucking character sheets, but I've actually completely forgotten what I did the year before.
Wasn't it games?
It was Arcade Blanchard and the time what's it, and it had to be 5 games because the concept didn't work in fewer than 4, and it would feel unsatisfying otherwise. No, this was just 3, right? I wasn't going to do 4 or 5. I still got my entrance fee refunded, because you get that if you got 3, but I didn't go in for the t-shirt or anything like that, because I valued my health more than that, and thank fuck, honestly, because if I had to find another way of another thing to do with the concept that I had, it would not have been great. So let me just find my notes here. I also have the props in front of me. So this was called Welcome to Junama. And Junama is a part of my setting that hasn't really shown up in a campaign yet. I think it might be about to in the main Dawn Somber campaign that the 2 of you are in. Just because it's probably going to be one of the areas that you visit in your attempt to fight kaiju and save the world. But an in-depth exploration of the country is probably not on the cards for the moment. Junama is fantasy India, sort of. I mean, it's not quite that. It's not supposed to be exactly like a 1-to-1 cognate. There are a lot of things that I think somebody trying to make fantasy India would put in Junama that I either didn't put in because I was unaware of them or because I think they suck ass, actually. A caste system is one of them. Not a fan of that, personally. Not into it. But I had just finished the concept for Junama, and I wanted this QCon group to be the first people to experience it. And I've been working with Maxi to sort of lay out exactly how Junama works. So big thank you both to her and to her friends who are more knowledgeable than her on India in general and Indian culture and other stuff like that.
Yeah, I also have to defer to my friends in this matter. Thanks guys, if you're listening.
The other quality, I guess, that was in Welcome to Junama, which was not immediately obvious to the players, was it involved the Illithids. Because, it's a tournament scenario. I want it to have some flash and some pizzazz, and the Illithids are an easy way to achieve that. I think I said on the previous podcast that the way I treat Illithids is they're basically Daleks, and boy, I was really phoning it in on that here. Do you want me to read the box text, for instance? This is what I submitted to Ali to put on the posters. I think she cut it down a little bit, so this won't be exactly what it said, but more or less, this is what a player looking at what games there were to play would have seen. It says, for millennia, the jungled nation of Junama and the city of Sirakpur within it has enjoyed peace and prosperity, supported by its triadic social structure sharing power equally between humans, minotaurs, and the elephantine Kaima. But what will happen when Sirakpur gets some unexpected visitors? Note, this game is part of a series. Attendees need not be the same each time, but the results of each session will affect which of two resultant scenarios is played in the next. Additionally, pre-made character sheets will be provided. Players are not permitted to bring their own. So we've talked before about character sheets, right?
Yeah.
50 fucking character sheets. And I've said, I said last time that one of the reasons why 50 fucking character sheets happened is A, because I couldn't count, and B, because I don't say I have a maximum 6 players at my table, I want to make 8 character sheets so that the last player who comes to the table still has a choice of 3. I didn't do that for this game because the pre-made character sheets you were obligated to use them, right? Because the way that the party was structured was actually a thing that couldn't just be left up to chance. So it's you can't bring your own character. You've got to be one of these characters. And it's it kind of hurt to do that, but it was also just the way that the concept is working here, it has to be like this. So this was the first scenario, and it's called The Arrival. And you play cops, basically. You play members of the Sirakpur City Guard. And one of the concepts that we came up with very early on was that humans, minotaurs, and Kaima are all how to put this? The sanctity of their lives are sacred to one another, which means that, for instance, it is blasphemous as well as illegal for a human to attack a minotaur or a Kaima, for instance. And so on, vice versa, but between the 3 points of the triad. It is not for a human to attack a human, and you can also, there are basically there are lifts of the limitations if you are acting in the defense of another member of that race. So you can, if you're a human, you can attack a Kaima if you are defending another Kaima, and for that reason, as a way of sort of working around that restriction, institutions that might need to act in violence, such as the army or the guard, operate in groups of 3. There's a human, there's a minotaur, and there's a Kaima. And then, depending on who they're dealing with, that decides who takes points. So I was okay, if there are going to be 6 players, then they have to be 2 humans, 2 minotaurs, and 2 Kaima, right? That's just... the Kaima, by the way, are renamed Loxodons from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. That's literally all they are. I didn't want to use Loxodon because, that's pretty heavily tied. I mean, it's a word, but it just means elephant. Using it in a fantasy context like this is, I believe, a pretty Wizards of the Coast and specifically Magic the Gathering thing. But I think I looked it up, and I think it literally just is Latin for elephant. So I was okay, if this is a controlled set of characters, that's great, because it means that I only have to make 6 character sheets per session. And then I had this concept where there would be a resultant from each session. There would be 2 sessions, and basically there would be a good end and a bad end to each session, and which one you got in. So, for instance, people would play session 1, and depending on the outcome of that session, I would pick one of the scenarios for session 2, and then each of those would have another one resultant from that. So I was only going to run 3 scenarios, but I had to make 7.
Yeah.
Which is, and so, conscious of 50 fucking character sheets, I wanted to try and reuse as much content as possible. So, I only had to make, 5. I believe that I only had to make 5 sets of character sheets. So that's only 30 character sheets this time. Because I would have, like, obviously, like, 2A and 2B were different. Oh, no, it wasn't even that. Like, 2A and 2B were actually the same set of character sheets. And then the 4 that could be for session 3, they had 2 sets of character sheets shared between them. So there'd be, like, 2 sessions that would share a set of character sheets. So it was 6, 6, 6, 6. It was 24 character sheets. So not even that bad compared to... It's half, literally less than half.
It is.
That wasn't the problem.
Well done.
Yeah, that wasn't. Yeah. That was not the issue. Especially since the characters in session 1 were level 1, which meant that they hadn't even most of them specialized into, like, subclasses. That was fine. That was not the source of the problem. The source of the problem came later. But let's talk about session 1 first. Session 1 is called The Arrival. And it's about a group of 6 members of the Sarepta City Guard who are called into a subterranean medical facility where doctors are really giving palliative care to a very heavily charred humanoid entity that fell from space.
Yeah, okay, very creepy.
Mm-hmm. And then the idea is that once they get down there, they watch the thing trick its doctor into leaning forward. It grabs her, it eats her brain, and then it just basically completely regenerates itself. And with the exception of being able to regain its abilities by eating the brains of non-player characters, I mostly played this Illithid as just an Illithid, like, that you would find in the monster manual. It was not really that different. I just wanted to do Dalek, you know?
Yeah.
Remember when we were all kids in 2005, and we were bloody terrified?
As we should have been, rightfully so.
Yeah.
I still think it's one of the best episodes of Doctor Who, honestly. It's certainly one of the best
very
Dalek
reserved.
episodes, yeah.
Absolutely. And I was like, cool, let's do that. And let's have all of these level 1 pre-gens. It's like, yeah, it's level 1 pre-gens fighting against a, like, CR7 monster. Not even that weird. Like, make it so that if they're careless, they can't wear it down. But beyond that, it doesn't really need anything to be changed about how it works. So, yeah, it can eat brains to... basically take a long rest, but beyond that, it was just an Illithid, and they killed it.
Oh,
they did kill it. I'm pretty sure that they killed it because whether they killed it or whether it makes it to the surface and is defeated by military force decides what the next session should be. And yeah, and session 2 was 2A, the warp. And so session 1, reasonably good and fun to do. It was fun actually because I had like one long in the tooth player who recognized ahead of time, out of character, that this was what it was, that it was an Illithid. But very graciously of him, did not do anything in character to deal with this because he seemed to know how this works, you know.
He did not metagame. What a we love to see it.
It's true, we do love to see it, because he seemed to be very much an OSR type player, and they're always kind of like a crapshoot as to like what specific era of like old school stuff they're into, as to whether or not they think metagaming is okay. Because if they're like very, very old OSR stuff, like basic D&D era, a lot of really early basic D&D, the actual role-playing part of role-playing game, A, did not matter at all, and B, if you leaned on it too much, was going to cause the DM to fuck you. Like, there was a huge amount of what, like, Gygax did in the early day that was basically just, like, trying to find ways to rat-fuck players. So you metagamed or you died, basically. And I think like the people who are into stuff like 2E onwards are a little bit like more understanding about stuff like, please don't metagame the beginning. I'm trying to I'm to set up a fun thing here.
Yes, I'm trying to do a thing. I'm making art here. Please do not metagame.
I think like a lot of it does come down to how much trust you have in your DM, and maybe there's an episode in that. Although I kind of feel like we've sort of diffused like my feelings in particular about stuff like 3.5 and Pathfinder just into other episodes. But yeah, 2A was the warp, and this is where the gimmick comes in. Because there's got to be a fucking gimmick, you know. It's fitting that I'm making Illithids like Daleks because I'm like Russell T Davies. I've always got to do a bigger thing than I did last time.
So what monsters did you turn into the Cybermen then? You know, how did?
I mean, that wasn't the thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
the gimmick was cards. I bought a set of clear Dragon Shield magic sleeves. And I made a ton of cards that I basically used to... this was another reason why making the sheets wasn't too bad, was in a lot of cases where I would want to put a class or race ability on the sheet so that the player didn't have to refer to the player's handbook all the time. I wasn't doing that because I was putting it on a card instead. So I had all the spell cards, and the spell cards were just spells, right? But then I also had these ability cards, and let's see if we can find... because obviously, like, some of these I've, like, edited afterwards because they were needed for other... they were needed for the third session, right? Because I'm not going to write the same card out twice so that one of them can stay pristine for, like, when I do a podcast about this months later. This involved the warp, which was an interesting concept that I'd explored vaguely earlier on. I think with you guys, like I think in main Dawnsumber, I think this was a thing that Ulithar's group did, where they use the dream powers of a stone giant, but they turn it into like an abomination called a dreamer, which gets to psychically affect reality via its dream. So it thinks things and they happen.
That fucking fight in your main game with the stone giant screwed me over.
Is this one? Is this the one where, in order
just nullified all of Zell's paladin abilities?
This was all right. Let's go on a brief tangent here because this is vaguely relevant. Around about that time, I was getting super mad about how the so many of the interesting things that I wanted to do to you lot as a group were being nullified by the fact that you had no reason to split up spatially, and Zell is like a beacon of saving throw bonuses. to the point where anything that required a player to fail a saving throw wasn't going to happen, right? Because Zell was, as a paladin, just this... What's the bonus that she gives now to anyone within 10 feet?
+5.
And it's not even 10 feet.
It's 30 feet now.
Yeah, it's 30 feet now. So it's a +5 bonus to saving throws.
As well as, like, immunity to the charmed and frightened conditions. Like, as long as I'm conscious. And
that bonus stacks with any other bonuses to saving throws that those characters may individually have. So I was like, Zell is preventing me from doing anything fun as a DM. So I invented this monster, the Dreamer, the illithified stone giant, which has an ability called Disbelieve, where as an action, it just looks at a player. It chooses an ability that player character has derived from their class. I don't think it could pick racial abilities, but but basically it can choose abilities that aren't just the ability to do an attack action, that sort of thing. You could choose extra attack for the fighter, but it couldn't choose just like the ability to attack. And it turns them off. And I did actually, I think, give it an internal limit as to how many it could turn off at the same time before it had to start like picking ones to release to turn off others. But that was just all it did, as it just looked at Zell and it turned off her like saving throw aura. Because it just decided in its reality that it had projected that she didn't have that. Which is like, that would be annoying to do as like a long-term thing. That would be kind of a dick move to just like be like a thing that turned up frequently. But I thought, for one fight, I want to do this. I want to have you guys I want to shake it up and have you guys actually think about what it is that you're doing. And I think I did something vaguely similar, at least in concept, for the final Ulithar fight, but it wasn't turning off abilities. But yeah, Maxi wasn't a fan because all of her abilities are gone. All the crutches she's leaning on are falling out beneath
I'll say,
her.
thank God you didn't take away my divine smite, because then I'm just an idiot with a sword, aren't I?
Just like the rest of us.
Yeah, obviously the Dreamer could have taken away your divine smite, but I mainly wanted to take away your auras because everybody in the party was leaning on them. So I was like, I didn't want to take away the stuff that let you be cool on an individualist level. I just wanted to take away the way that you were propping up the entire party.
You know what? Look, Alex, I completely forgive you, especially seeing as recent developments have essentially made Zell the Messiah. So
I think we'll call Zell a Messiah. I think the Messiah is a bit presumptuous, but she's definitely a messianic figure to a specific set of people. Maybe a couple of sets of people. So yeah, that's what the warp was that basically the four Illithids who were out in the jungle, who had crash landed. The storyline I came up with, I guess in my head behind the scenes, was that these Illithids were from the original crop. They were from Illith's lot rather than Ulithar's. Because then it's weird because this is like a backstory that spans 2 campaigns. But that they crash land in the jungle because the astral plane is connected to the material plane. So they fall out of space. One of them falls out of their little escape capsule and lands in Sarakpur. The rest of them have a stone giant head, basically, attached to their weird machinery that they use to heavily, they can't properly warp reality, but they can create... that they can do weird, fucked up things to nearby people. They can warp reality, but they don't do that in real time. They do that, as a spreading sickness, basically. But they can also, as we find later on, transport people into, a dream world, basically. They get to do, loads of, fucky psychic things, which is how I like Illithids to be. So 2A, the warp, is 3 to 6 junior priests have to find out why the temple water is making people sick, including flesh warping effects. They descend into the caverns below the temple to discover that the spirit of the world, Sansa, who has been prevented from properly tending to the local area, and her powers are being overridden by psychic abilities as the population mutate. Over the course of the scenario, the spellcaster's spells and abilities are replaced by illithid abilities. Sansa is, how to put this? You know, in the Elder Scrolls, Mankar Cameron's theory is that Nirn is a plane of oblivion, the same as any other, and that its Oblivion Lord, its Daedra Lord, was Lorcan.
Mm-hmm.
Sansa is kind of like that for the material plane. She's the nature spirit that underlies druid abilities, but also if the material plane is a divine domain, she is the god of it. And she comes in many different presentations depending on exactly how you want to interact with her and what specific field you need Sansa's assistance with. So what I would have is this card for each of their abilities. So let's pick this one, for instance, because I think I've found the alternate card. Wild Shape, the druid ability, right? You're all familiar with Wild Shape. You've all played a druid or looked at the PHB briefly. It's twice per long rest. You can turn into an animal that you've seen before for a certain number of hours, depending on how powerful a druid you are. And if you fall unconscious, drop to 0 hit points, die, or use a bonus action, you can revert. And then, at some point, when their flesh is warped, because I would have these flesh warping effects that they needed to save against happened throughout the course of them going down into the caves beneath the temple to find the temple water. Anybody who failed a save, I would say to them, pick one of your cards and turn it over. Ooh. And on the other side of Wild Shape is Mutable Flesh, Illithid Mutation. Twice per long rest, you can use an action to assume the form of a beast, as in Wild Shape, an aberration, a monstrosity, or an ooze. The restrictions for each are the same as for Wild Shape. When you gain this ability, you regain the ability to use Mutable Flesh twice before needing to take a long rest, regardless of how many times you used your Wild Shape. So it's basically, I didn't want it to be they turned it over and then they couldn't use their cool new ability because they'd already used the ability that it was derived from. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Let me see. What's another one that we might have? I'll see if I can figure out which ability it might have gone to, because there are a huge load of them here. Because obviously I had to do one for each ability every class had. I think that one might be the Minotaur one. Because I did these for racial abilities as well. So obviously there was the Kaima ones and the Minotaur ones because they have special racial abilities. Let me see if I can find the monk card that goes to this one, because this is an interesting one. Because obviously these would have been in the sleeves at the time, so that if you turned it over, it would change from the class or race ability into the illithid ability. Stillness of mind, key, evasion, defense. So martial arts is a monk ability. When you're unarmed or wielding only monk weapons and you aren't wearing armor or wielding a shield, you can use dex instead of strength for attack and damage roll modifiers. You can roll your martial arts damage die in place of the normal damage, and when you use the attack action on your turn, you can make one unarmed strike as a bonus action. Flips over into Violet Robes arts. The Violet Robes being the Mensa-like group that Illith, the creator of the Illithids, made the Illithids out of. That's it. While you're unarmed or wielding only monk weapons and you aren't wearing armor or wielding a shield, you can use Dex, Int, or Whiz for attack and damage roll modifiers, and you can roll your martial arts die instead of the damage. Your martial arts die is one size larger than it would otherwise be, So a d4 becomes a d6, a d6 a d8, and so on. And when you make the attack action on your turn, you can make one unarmed strike as a bonus action. A lot of the illithid mutations were just straight up better than the ability that they replaced, largely because at the end of that session, and I think, Maxi, was this the session you were in?
It was.
At the end of that session, when they found the wellspring, because here's the thing, is that all 6 of these classes were religious focused. I think there was a cleric, a druid, a paladin, a ranger, a monk, and a divine soul sorcerer. And at the end, when they get to the wellspring, they would have to try and purify the wellspring to remove the illithid taint, as opposed to corrupting the wellspring by completely taking it over with the illithid taint. And that was a collective role. And I said that if you had been completely mutated, if you turned over all your cards, you immediately failed that roll. That you were actually psychically forbidden from attempting to make that roll, so that the group would have to make that group skill check with one fewer person. You got an automatic failure. So it was a sort of, during the session, you get to in fact, I think it was that your bonus was reduced by however many cards you'd turned over or something like that. So it was the more mutated you got, the harder it was for you to purify the spring at the end, and if you were completely mutated, you straight up couldn't. So it was you get to play with the cool mutations during the game, but then at the end, it's not just that evil is stronger, it's that you're getting locked out of another ability that you need. And here's the thing, that was fun as fuck. It went off perfectly. It was really cool and fun. The players loved doing... Maxi, you remember this, right? I think every time I was make a warp check or whatever, the players were yeah! And then they'd make the saving throw and see if they made it. And if they didn't, I'd be well, pick one of your cards to turn over. And they'd turn over a card and be cool, I get this new gnarly thing. And I think also I would describe the flavor of how that happened. I wish I could find the Kaima has an ability that pertains to just having a trunk, and I think I put the flavor such that the illithid mutation pertaining to that gives you 3 more trunks or something like that. It was dead gnarly. Oh, here's another one. The Paladin's Divine Smite ability. So you know Divine Smite. You can expend spell slots when you hit things to turn them into radiant damage. Depending on how big the spell slot is, depends how much additional radiant damage you get, and you can also increase it if the target's an undead or a fiend. Turn it over, and it becomes Psychic Hemorrhage. When you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can expend 1 paladin spell slot to deal psychic damage to the target in addition to the weapon's damage. The extra damage is 3d8 for a first level spell slot, which is notably 1d8 higher than a Divine Smite, plus 1d8 for each spell level higher than first, to a maximum of 6d8, which is, again, 1 higher than Divine Smite. The damage increases by 1d8 if the target is a humanoid or beast. So instead of undead or fiends, now you're fighting against, humanoids, people and animals, basically. This feature cannot be used if the target is an aberration, so basically because the illithids are gaining more control over you, they won't let you hurt them. You can't psychic hemorrhage them. So that was real fun. I loved that aspect of it, but I was ready to not do that for part 3, so we scaled it back a bit. They did manage to sanctify the wellspring in the cave, right? They did do that.
Yeah. It did come down to a clutch roll with that one, because I think two players had turned over all of their cards, so they were definitely on board with the whole let's corrupt the wellspring.
I think it was actually that one player had been completely mutated, and one of them, because here's the thing, right? Not all classes, not all class race combinations have the same number of cards, so it would be possible for I think, for instance, the sorcerer only had 3 cards or something, whereas there were the paladin had something 10, which means that it would be possible for some players to still have a chance of making that roll with a much higher penalty than, say, I think it was the sorcerer who was fully corrupted, would ever have been able to do. So I think there was one totally corrupted player and one very heavily corrupted player. And yeah, it was a pretty clutch roll. But they did do it, and they managed to neuter the warp's power in the city. And that takes us to the route. Open link. So a group of would-be adventurers carrying with them the light of Sansa must venture into the jungle to route the source of the reality warping disturbance. I think that sounds right. Yeah, I think that's right. So this was the other thing that I wanted to do between sessions was if I could reuse a map, I would reuse the map. So a lot of the planned scenarios, I think there's basically just 3 maps. There's 4. There'll be 4 maps. There's the subterranean medical facility, the city in general, which would have been the alternative to the 2A. 2B was the populace in Sarakpur are getting mutated, and they have to try and heal them. There's underneath the temple, and there's out in the jungle, right? Which were, generally speaking, the 4 maps. So I was like, cool, I'm not doing more than that. I'm not making more work for myself. I will reuse those. And so there are some scenarios that like change them up. I believe that there's the one that's like if everything's gone really, really bad, is also in the jungle, because you're basically carrying a bomb to destroy the Illithid's ship to stop the spread of the mutation's infection, because Sarakpur is like done. It is gone. But there's also one where I think like they have to travel down into the area beneath the temple to destroy the wellspring, which will save the populace but mean that Sarakpur is no longer habitable. But no, this one was best. It was the route. It was these adventurers have the light of Sansa, and they must travel into the jungle to route the source of the reality warping disturbance. This was an interesting mechanic as well, because what I did was, instead of having every single card be a flip over to be a Voice of Sansa ability or an Illithid mutation, I was like, cool, we're not going to do that. Instead, each player has all of their abilities on cards which don't turn over, and one additional ability that is different depending on whether they are in the real world, where they get a Voice of Sansa ability, or they're inside the dream projected by the warp, in which case they get an aspect of the warp ability. So this was like a sort of dual world gameplay thing, where every so often I would be like, the warp is here, and nothing makes sense, and it's all like non-Euclidean Escher geometry, and you're fighting psychic monsters in a dreamscape, as opposed to walking through the jungle where you fight like jungle monsters and Rakshasa, the tiger demons, which are a going concern in Janama. So here is, let me see. Okay, this one's for the sorcerer, because it mentions meta magic. In the real world, you get Electrified Soul, which is a Voice of Sansa ability. Your Twin Soul metamagic ability costs 1 sorcery point less, to a minimum of 0, for each spell that would deal only thunder or lightning damage. So I think this was a Storm Soul sorcerer, and it's the Twin Soul metamagic allows you to spend sorcery points to copy a spell that you cast, and Electrified Soul was basically, as long as you are in the real world jungle, that metamagic ability is free if you use it for a spell that would only deal thunder or lightning damage. Which was not that hard to do for a Storm Soul sorcerer. A lot of the spells that had been picked for that sorcerer dealt thunder or lightning damage, so it was a pretty great ability to have. Then, when you go to the warp, it turns over to Unlimited Power aspect of the warp. The damage dealt by your Heart of the Storm ability is equal to your sorcerer level. Additionally, you may target a creature within 30 feet of you with that ability, as long as it is the only creature you target. If you do, that creature must make a wisdom saving throw or be stunned until your next turn. The DC for this save equals your sorcerer level plus the level of the spell you cast that activated the ability. One thing that you can immediately see is that because this was just one additional bonus that they got, I didn't need to have the two abilities actually have anything to do with each other, and in fact it was better if they didn't, because then it's like you get to like play a dramatically different way depending on whether you're in the warp or in the real world, right? Rather than have it's basically the same ability, but with different flavor on it, and maybe like the numbers are slightly different. So, Heart of the Storm is a Storm Sorcerer ability that says you have resistance to lightning and thunder damage. In addition, whenever you start casting a spell of first level or higher that deals lightning or thunder damage, stormy magic erupts from you. This eruption causes creatures of your choice that you can see within 10 feet of you to take lightning or thunder damage, choose each time this ability activates, equal to half your sorcerer level. So, the unlimited power, which I now realize was not just I needed a name, it's literally a Star Wars reference. Because what you're doing is normally the damage that it deals is half your sorcerer level. Unlimited power boosts it to your sorcerer level, which at this point was quite high, I think. I don't quite remember how. I don't have the sheets. I don't know how high. I think they were like level 10 or 12, something like that. So it was quite a decent chunk of change damage wise. And so yeah, it doubles the damage, and you can also stun a creature within 30 feet of you. Additionally, you may target a creature within 30 feet of you with that ability, as long as it is the only creature you target. So yeah, it says creatures of your choice that you can see on the original spells, ability rather. So that's increased from 10 feet to 30 feet, but only if you only choose one creature. Otherwise, you're limited to 10 feet. But if you do, you can also stun that creature if they fail a saving throw. And the DC is increased by your sorcerer level plus the level of the spell you cast that activated the ability. So I think the reason I did that was because you'd think it would just use the sorcerer's spell save DC, but I think I deliberately wanted it to be a low AC, low DC rather, because it was an ability that they were basically getting for free. Heart of the Storm triggers quite a lot when you're a Storm Sorcerer, especially if you have like a lot of lightning and thunder damage spells. And I didn't want them using it to just one-shot the final boss, which is always a concern that you should have when you're designing encounters in D&D. Is like, will this allow them to one-shot the final boss? There's so much in D&D where like somebody does something clever, and you're like, how do I let the player do this, but only do it once?
Yeah. You're like,
It's like, this is cool, and I want to let the player do it because they were clever for thinking it up this time, but I don't want there to be precedent set to allow that to happen. So, like, what excuse can I think of that they could only do this once? So yeah, I deliberately gave that a low DC so that, like, the increased range was the major benefit, but and the increased damage. But it could also be that if they rolled really bad, you could straight up stun them, which was fun. That was cool. So each of the I think it was 5 players this time, or maybe even 4, but each of them had one of these, where it's like, this is just a cool bonus that you get. Now here's another one. Let's look at this one. Who's this for? Oh, this is for the Barbarian. So the voice of Sansa in the jungle says, when your rage ends, if you were in a frenzy, you can make a con save as long as you are within 30 feet of a plant, running water, a fire, or if you are in direct sunlight. So these are all aspects of Sansa, aspects of Sansa's love, or whatever. The DC for this save is 10 plus the number of times you used your frenzy extra attack during that rage. On a success, you do not gain a level of exhaustion. So the more you frenzied... the more you use your frenzy extra attack, the higher the roll you got to make. But basically, Sansa will save you from exhaustion. And then in the warp, dream together. Being knocked unconscious pauses your rage instead of ending it until you become conscious again. Additionally, not having attacked or taken damage since your last attack doesn't cause your rage to end if an ally within 30 feet did attack or take damage during that time. So I think the flavor of this one is that you are becoming, like, psychically connected to your comrades. So, like, you don't pause your rage when you're knocked unconscious because you can see through their eyes, and, like, you share their rage, so you don't end your rage if you didn't attack as long as they attacked. That kind of thing.
Mm.
And obviously, because they're just like a fun bonus, I could make them a lot more specific than the abilities that were flipped over. The third session was way simpler. Like, the second one was real hard, but the third one was just nice. It did go on too long, and they didn't quite finish it, so there was no boss fight at the end. They just briefly met the three Illithids and convinced them to leave, I think. And I tell you what, it was great that was the third session, because I have no idea. If I had to choose whether that was a good end or a bad end, I'd have no earthly clue.
Well, that was lucky then.
Yeah. Presumably that means that in canon, those three Illithids are still out there somewhere. Although
we'll meet them in future Somber or die trying.
You really won't. I would imagine that they've probably been exterminated by the Gith. Largely because, like,
they weren't very good at their job.
Well, no, but also because, remember, these are, like, original Illith stock. You'll find this out at the beginning of Future Somber, but, like, the Illithids are basically dying because they have... You know in Vampire the Masquerade how, modern vampires are very weak because vampirism gets diluted the further away from Cain it gets?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically that. It's that every time the Illithids promote an Illithid to being an Elder Brain and have it make tadpoles and convert people, the Illithids that they make are, like, more watered down and weaker. So the Illithids that you're going to meet at the start of the Future Somber campaign are a shadow of their former selves, and they're looking for, like, the purest, earliest Illithids. So, I don't know, maybe these three Mind Flayers would be actually in high demand because they were, like, their Generation Zero, basically. Well, I say Generation Zero, probably Generation 1, because I don't think they were original Violet Robes, but they would have been, like, very early on. So yeah, maybe they're still around, and maybe I could use them as villains, I don't know. Because they escape. So, this was what I designed, like, late on for what this was going to be, then when I knew that was how it was all going to work out. It was okay. I had fun. Like, this concept worked out about as well as I could have hoped. I definitely hadn't been prepared for the amount of work it was going to be, and that's part of the reason why I want to stop doing this sort of thing for QCon. Because it takes so much preparation, and it's so hard on my health to, like, get it all done in time. I just want to... I'm getting older, you know? I'm not getting any younger. I just want to chill out a bit. I want to run, like, other cool stuff, but... Definitely this was cool, right? Like, for a long while, I was like, how do I top Arcade Blanchard's time travel adventure? When I did 5 fucking games with 50 character sheets to do basically the same session every time. Like, this is the thing, I always fall into this trap. I'm like, I have this idea, and then I'm like, oh, but that idea would need these extravagant, like... conditions to make it work. So I should ease back on this thing, for instance. So for the 50 fucking character sheets game, it was basically the same session 5 times, right? That was the mitigating factor that I thought would solve everything, and it fucking didn't. And just here as well, I was like, oh, I have to write 7 sessions, but I only have to run 3 of them, so they don't have to be in depth. And then there was this whole thing with the cards, which they looked great. People loved them. I don't regret doing it, but I'm not doing anything like this again. It was too much. That said, I do have a full deck of crystal clear dragon shields to put a magic deck in now, or to do other stuff like this on a smaller scale later on. I do actually like the idea of being able to, like, pass out abilities on cards, just because I think handing a small stack of cards to a player is easier than like trying to hand a PHB around or like having weird printouts of like the PDFs of the player's handbook and stuff like that. I do like also I think what I'll do is on the video version of this podcast, I'll try and see about getting like scans or photographs of some of the cards up so that you can see. But each card has like the symbol from the press kit, the Wizard's press kit for that class, or a symbol for the race, if it's a racial ability, like in the background. And they all have like a different coloured frame depending on whether they're like a racial ability or a class ability and what class they are an ability of. Or whether they're a feat. There are a couple of feats in here. I actually have the lucky feat because they were all variant humans, because I thought if you had to pick a human, then that would suck. Because I used stat spread. I didn't roll for the stats because I thought if players have to choose one of my pregens and the sixth player doesn't get a choice, I don't want people to have just like not picked the character with shit stats. So I used the stat spread in the PHP. So that meant all of the humans were variant humans, so they all got 1 feat. So the lucky feat, 3 luck. You can look up the lucky feat yourselves. Turns into Illith's Fortune. You have 3 luck. You may use this luck as per the lucky feat to roll an additional d20 to choose an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check you make. But you may spend luck points after the DM tells you if the roll succeeds, as opposed to the lucky feat where you must do it before. You may spend a luck point to reroll a saving throw a creature made against your spell save DC and choose either result. And you may spend a luck point to change all the results on a spell's damage dice to their maximum. So it increases the utility that you have for your luck points, that one, because it was from session 2. Also, the Illithid mutations and the aspects of Sansa have a special border on the cards so that they're easily identifiable. The Voice of Sansa stuff has sort of like a stained glass type flower thing going on, and the Illithid things have like these weird tentacle things on their frames. They look cool. I like them a lot. I'm glad that I did it. This was neat to do, but I wasn't anticipating the amount of work that it was. So that was me at QCon, and now is the part of the podcast where I stop talking, and instead we listen to one of these two. Which of you would like to go first?
Gosh.
All right. Which of you is going to go first?
I'll do it. I won't talk much about Critter Castle 2 Electric Boogaloo because I was mostly an observer in those games. It was all very last minute for me, as I thought that I wasn't gonna go. I'd missed the deadline because I was trying to get tickets for Radio 1's big weekend, and I ended up not getting tickets for that because Ticketmaster is one of the true great evils of the Western world.
Radio 1's big weekend, for those playing along at home, is a music festival. Beth did not just want tickets to go and sit in a radio studio for a weekend. That's not.
Yeah, it was taking place very close to my hometown, very close.
It's as British music festivals go, it's pretty mid-tier. It's no like Glastonbury or whatever, but it's not like some random local event that nobody's ever heard of. People know about Radio 1's big.
Yeah, and it's like the reason why it's kind of a big deal is it's somewhere different every year. So it's been you'll know where it is if you Google online. It was in Middlesbrough this year, which is very close to where I live. I would
actually, you know what? Given that it's not related to the podcast at all, and we need to get on, and people can look up Radio 1's big weekend themselves, and if they are nearby to where it's going on, maybe go see. But it's not our purview to explain what that is to our audience.
But I wanted to go to that, and then I ended up not getting tickets, and then I'd also missed the deadline to pay for Critter Castle. So I was like, well, fuck, I guess that's not happening. Fuck me, I guess. I'll just have a miserable summer. And then Stephanie, the woman who organises it, sort of, I think probably a month before, said, are you still interested in coming? And I was like, I thought I'd missed the deadline, yeah, I'll come. So everything was sort of like last minute. So I hadn't done really anything that I'd wanted to do for it. And there were a few spaces for games open, so I basically just hopped into whatever game was available.
Including mine.
Yeah. Well, yours, I'd hopped into it on the day because someone had bowed out because they weren't feeling very well. So I was expecting to just basically play through one game. That was fine for me. I was like, that's cool. And it was very fun. And that was a very, what I think is the very traditional experience. It was pre-gens, we had character sheets, we're all talking around, and there was like, it was a good time. A big thanks to Ryan for doing that. It was a very enjoyable experience, because I know that wasn't Ryan's intention. Ryan was DMing, filling in for another friend of ours.
Yeah, because it was originally Ben's game, and he couldn't then go. So he sent Ryan, like, the basis of what he wanted to do in the game, and Ryan just completely took over the DMing for it.
Yeah.
Which is, like, I don't even know how you can do that for, like, someone else's, like, session notes and everything for a world that's just not your own, or not, like, official content.
It was really interesting, but regardless, a good time was had by all. Lifelong friendships were forged on that table. Many jokes were had. I found out that I am the type of player who panics and does stupid things in certain situations, like starts a random fight with someone. And it started off very dark and edgy, and then it turned into like the power of family and friendship.
Look,
and...
it didn't last for dark and edgy, and that was
didn't.
what was hilarious. Literally 10 minutes into the game, when we were like getting explained the concept of, you are this orc warlord's elite personal like assassin slash like fighting force of like these 4 people strong, and we basically decided that we were like his eclectic group of adopted children that he had like trained to be like these elite bodyguards, but also like had their own weird motif that was kind of stylized on the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, it was,
and I played an absolutely insane person.
You were. I have no, like, that character just like, A, lives on in my nightmares, B, lives on in my dreams, is the greatest.
Oh my god.
Like simultaneously not only a completely terrifying, like, being that, like, but also, like, kind of moe in a way, like, I don't...
Like, I enjoyed what basically turned into legitimate fear from the other players, of just, like, they were like, okay, this is the sort of character you want to be, fine. And there was one point where we capture a god and tie him up for information, and literally the means of getting information out of that god became, look, if you don't give us what we want to know, we turn you over to them. And they just point at my character, who's just kind of reclining on the wall with this incredibly wide smile.
I think as well, we were trying to get your character set up as well. In a relationship. It was very funny.
No, you weren't. What you were trying to do was like, can this character just be like crossed over, and I try and matchmaker them into something else, because I want this person to like have happiness, and I'm like, believe me, the Vagrant's happy.
The Vagrant's happy.
The Vagrant is very happy.
Yeah, and it was also my first time playing a dwarf, which is really interesting, and I would play a short character again. For those of you at home who don't know and haven't heard of this running gag, I refuse to play characters under 5'7", maybe, because I have a complex about it. And that's just how it is.
I don't know if we've talked about it before, but I still, like, vividly remember you actually rolling the stats for your future Somber character, and you rolled for the height.
Yeah.
And he was He was really short. He was about as tall as Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah.
You said, and I was like, oh, that'll be cute. Like, I'll be the tall one, you'll be the short one. And then, like, a month later, you sent me a message out of nowhere going, like, Maxi, I can't do it. I can't be short. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I have to be the tall one. And I'm like, it's okay, man. I didn't care. If you want to be tall, you be tall.
Yeah. So yeah, I had a good time at Critter Castle, and I jumped in on Maxi's game as well, but I'll let Maxi talk more about those 2 sessions. And then I was like, you know what, for the next one, what I really want to do is I would like to DM. I like DMing, I'm very comfortable DMing. Very often I was in Honey Heist as well. That was a lot of fun as well. That was crazy. Big shout out to Emmy. And her crazy...
We killed Emmy.
Yeah, we love Emmy. And yeah, that was a lot of fun as well, but I don't really think most of what happened in that session can be repeated on a family podcast.
This isn't a family podcast, piss off. I've marked us as 18 plus on Anchor and on all of the services that we're like, we swear like a minute into every podcast. It's not a family podcast. If you're a child listening to this, that's
Go
not okay.
away.
That's not okay. We're going to tell your parents.
If you're a non-adult teenager, then in terms of like actual lasting damage to your personality, it's probably fine, but also we'll probably still get in trouble, so don't.
So don't.
You know?
Okay,
It's
right.
like, I mean, I guess use your own judgment.
like still, Beth, do not repeat it. even though we've got that assurance, it's like
I guess it crosses...
I think even actual adults are gonna be traumatized.
Yeah, I think it crosses several lines of bestiality and I don't
okay,
think...
no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
don't think we'll talk about it. It's sort of, again, those sessions are amazing and they're wonderful, and I was very sad that I couldn't do it this year, but hopefully in the next one this summer I'll be able to return to the Honey Heist verse. But
Yeah.
it's
For those playing along at home, Honey Heist is a very wholesome one-page RPG where you are all bears who are trying to steal honey from somewhere, and I don't know what the fuck these two and their degenerate friends did to it that caused it to become unrepeatable on what is ostensibly a family podcast, but not really.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. I didn't suck any dicks, okay? That's not on me.
I mean, I don't even know, like, how this happened. I don't even know, like, whose idea this was.
I think we found the cold open for the episode.
Anyway.
So
yeah, Honey Heist is really fun. I hope to play it in the summer. It would be really nice. Anyway, so I'm getting my shit together for February and stuff like that. And honestly, I kind of rushed it all a little bit, but I did have it done a good few days beforehand. So you write everything down. I kind of had all these ideas, and I drew up some props and stuff like that with some like information on the back of them. I don't know if I remember giving them all out at the end of the session because everyone wanted to keep them basically. I don't know if Maxi still has the ones that Maxi got, or the one that was given to Maxi.
I kept the cute owl bear that you drew.
Yeah. Well, there's some other props. But one of these included an actual pineapple. Because
see, I'm excited about the pineapple because I knew ahead of time, because you were talking about like the logistics of the pineapple, of like how I think were you doing this in the Franklin game so that Maxi wouldn't hear?
Possibly, or it might have been private chat between the two of us.
No, because I remember you were definitely saying it in like verbally. We were talking on Discord.
Oh, must have been
I'm also
then,
wondering if maybe it was like a lot of the time we go well into the night on our Monday games or whatever, and Maxi is a productive human being with a job, and as such needs to get up, early in the morning and cannot
6
stay.
a.m.
Cannot stay and talk as late as everybody else. So it might have been that Maxi had gone to bed, and but I remember you telling me about the pineapple, and like we were trying to figure out. I think this was Franklin chat actually. We were
It
trying
was
to figure
because
out.
I remember with Richard or Niall being involved in it. Probably Niall.
Yeah. And I remember us, because we were all collectively trying to figure out. We all collectively agreed that the pineapple was the funniest fruit that you could use in that situation, but also that I think like mangoes and bananas were good picks as well. But also like because you would have had to get it from the local village as close to the game time as possible, because pineapples just go the fuck off.
Yeah.
So how did that work
right,
out,
okay,
by the way?
so,
Like, let us know.
I was working this out, and I was talking to my mum about it in the car. We were driving back from something, and I was like, I need to talk to you about something. And it's Dungeons and Dragons related. And she was
I mean,
like...
that's probably good.
And she was like, okay. And I was like, I need to get a pineapple, and I'm wondering how long a pineapple is going to last me, and also where would be the best place to get a pineapple. And Mum was like, I don't know. And I was like, I think Morrison sells them year-round. And Mum was like, I think you're right. And she was throwing out a couple of ideas as well. There was, like, other, like, maybe props that I could have used in place of a pineapple. And I was telling her my idea about this session is that, like, essentially, all of the players wake up with hangovers.
In Elf Las Vegas.
In Elf Las Vegas. And they cannot remember the night before, but they are various items in their hotel room. So one of them has like a key, one of them has like a high roller card, one of them had a ring, one of them was wearing like a leather jacket and nothing else. One of them was sort of cuddling up to a tame owl bear, and one of them had a pineapple. I think, was that everything?
I think so.
I think so. There were seven players, wasn't there? And each of them had a prop.
Beth, I'm going to be real with you. I got drunk that night.
You got very drunk that night. You did get very drunk.
I did not get very drunk that night.
So there were 6 players.
I got reasonably drunk.
7 including me.
What I immediately enjoy about even this juncture in you telling this story is how already transparently evident it is that it was not necessary for you to physically procure these items to give to the players at all.
No, it wasn't. But
that you did not need to do that.
I didn't
and the amount of like time that we and as mentioned, your mother spent thinking about how you would procure the pineapple was utter nonsense. But I love it. That's actually like it was that sounds like a really nice like DM bit to do. Is like let the players have feelies.
Yeah.
To work with.
And most of these things I couldn't actually physically. I think I managed to I used one of my own costume jewellery rings for the ring. A ring is a relatively easy thing to acquire. The key wasn't. There was an old key that I wanted to find, but I couldn't find it. So I ended up drawing it, and the same with the card. And the leather jacket as well. And understandably, I could not find a real owlbear. There were things that I did want to do, but I was on a budget, and I was like, I can just draw these things. I think perhaps if I'd had time, perhaps I would have gotten maybe like a tiny 4 dolls leather jacket or something, and maybe found like a real old key, and been able to make like a fake, like plastic credit card. But the owlbear was always going to be an issue, so I was like, it's fine to like draw one of these things and then draw the rest of them.
I mean, I think like part of the problem with owlbears is I'm fairly certain they're Wizards of the Coast product identity, which means that in terms of like large scale production where you have to contend with IP lawyers and stuff, only Wizards of the Coast sanctioned companies can make them if they were going to make like a cuddly owlbear, which means that to get one, it's basically Etsy or nothing, and that runs up pretty pricey pretty quickly.
Exactly. Like I was like, in theory, I could buy a teddy and I could buy a stuffed owl and just Frankenstein them together, but that's going to take a time and skill I do not have. So.
Sorry, I'm now thinking of a Frankenstein together owl teddy bear.
Yeah. So that was kind of off the table. It's like, it's fine to draw these and then draw most of the others, because that's okay. But, that they were like physical things, and pretty much they were like item cards as well. You would flip it over and it would have a description of the item, kind of describing various things. I wish I kind of had kept most of them, but I don't think I did. But, there was stuff like, this is a ring, it's of an ornate design, it appears to be an engagement ring worth of about this much gold. It smells funny. And then, there was stuff underneath in red that was perhaps some questions you would be asking yourself. So, this isn't your ring, is it? It was everything. And then on the back of the owlbear, it had, the owlbear's abilities and stuff like that, and, a personality that she had. Her name was Cupcake.
I loved her.
And then I decided to physically procure a real pineapple. There were some logistics about the pineapple, because it's a pineapple. And I had to take it all the way down from, the northeast all the way down to Wales, on public transport. So I have this pineapple, and I'm like, what do I do with this pineapple? Because I'm acutely aware that the more I'm going to handle it, actually, the more chance it has of actually, breaking and stuff like that. So if I can just, So I end up taking my dad's massive travel bag. This was very difficult to use on public transport, but it did actually manage to have room for, my pillow and stuff. So it was pretty useful. And it had a separate compartment for the pineapple. So should the worst happen and the pineapple smash...
I love that what you mean is there was a separate compartment which I used for the pineapple, not that your dad's travel bag has a special compartment just for pineapples.
Well, it was very strangely shaped, but yeah, I used it for the pineapple, because should the worst happen and it get smashed or squashed or stepped on, as annoying as that would be, and I would have no pineapple for the session, I also wouldn't have pineapple all over my pillow, so that was good. Because I don't know if anybody's ever been to a Youth Hostel Association youth hostel. Their beds fucking suck for bigger people. They are the fucking worst. I don't know how comfy you find them, Maxi, but I do not enjoy them.
They weren't especially comfy, but as I said, I got frequently drunk.
Yeah,
and it didn't matter.
I
could have slept upright. In fact, I'm pretty sure at one point I did for a power nap.
Yeah, so I brought my own pillow and it helped a little bit, maybe. Anyway, so I do this session and I'm rolling randomly for the placement of everyone in this room, because I put out a little map and I was like, this is where all the players are going to be. I was kind of dreading, what if someone doesn't show up for the session? What if someone says that they're not feeling well and they don't want to do it? It could potentially throw that session off and stuff like that. So there were some items that were kind of throwaways, like the card, and like the ring, that maybe didn't need to be involved so much. And I could kind of just circumvent around that. But basically, these items were there to lead you on kind of like a little, what's the term?
Wild goose chase?
No.
Scavenger hunt.
Scavenger hunt of perhaps the preceding events that had happened the night before. So they find out that one of them, and I love that it was this character. It was Beth's character, and their character was an elderly bard who was really old and had hit the jackpot of a lifetime and was incredibly wealthy and rich now. And I like that it was the old lady. I really love that. And so you would find out that one of you had hit the jackpot, and that's why you were in the high roller suite. You were in the most expensive, nicest one in this casino. Your key was the explanation about where all your items had went, because very early on you are aggressed by the police, about some things that had went on the night before, and a theft that had happened, because the Imperial finest diamond had went missing from the museum.
And then we were like, did we take that?
And one of the theories that I really liked that emerged was that the pineapple had been polymorphed into the diamond. The diamond had been polymorphed into the pineapple.
Was that one of my theories?
I think it was. But this you'd all came up with this theory after they'd all ate the pineapple, in character, which I thought was really funny. As I will get into later on, that was not the case. And then they had this like leather jacket, and it got recognised, I think, fairly early on by a very helpful member of staff of the casino as being Valentin's jacket, who is a character from my main campaign.
And like the entire time, by the way, as a player in one of in two of Beth's main campaigns, I am the only one there who is like having what could only be described as a fangirling fit over the fact that like there is just all of these references going on, and literally Valendir, my character's boyfriend in our main game, is just inexplicably there in Help Las Vegas. And then I was like, actually that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense why he's here.
And there was a lot of contention about whether Valendir and the character who had the leather jacket, I cannot remember the character's name, I feel really bad, 1 second. I'll refer to my notes. Was it Mariner, a human bard, I think, yeah, who had woken up with the jacket on and was like, did we sleep together? And Valentir was like, heavens no, when they finally found him.
He's like, yeah, I'm gay.
I'm gay. And Mariner's like,
I have a husband.
Yeah.
And a daughter.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, future Valentir.
And it was a really good time. I really enjoyed the experience. All the players were like picking up on these little like clues. And then I did have to do a little bit of like, because I'll be honest, when I said I didn't super figure out how it was going to end, I knew they were going to fight an ancient white dragon at the end, but I didn't know how I was going to get them to do that. And they did though. They did it. Like, yeah.
It was great.
I think before then as well, when they were trying to figure out what had happened to the diamond, at the most convenient or inconvenient possible moment, Cupcake shits all over the place and reveals that she ate the diamond. That's where it had been the whole time. In Cupcake's
but like,
tummy.
that literally still means that we did steal the diamond.
Which technically does mean you stole a diamond, it's true.
So we were like, right to suspect ourselves, but also we are now irresponsible people for allowing this owl bear to have eaten the diamond.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, the owlbear's, like, previous situation was not super great in terms of being abused at a circus, and we had liberated her. But also, we did feed her a diamond.
Yeah.
While drunk.
I do enjoy that. And then I don't know if you ended up returning the diamond or keeping the diamond for you. I don't know if Valentin ended up keeping the diamond for himself. I actually super can't remember what happened or what happened to the diamond. It doesn't really matter.
I mean, I feel as though that's up to you whenever we get finished with the main tour game of like, let's skip forward about 20 years when like Valendir shows up and goes, honey, we're rich.
Honey, we're rich. It was just a really good time and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, and then, you know, Maxi ended up getting the pineapple through random rolls. And all through it, Maxi's character was like, do you know what this is? And the answer would always...
I also ended up getting a girlfriend.
The answer...
Which is hilarious.
Like, everyone was like, that's a pineapple. It's a tropical fruit. That was a pretty common running gag through the game. And I think in the end, the pineapple, like, that you never really found out where it came from. I think I said that maybe it had been the ancient white dragons. I kind of threw you a bone there, like a little narrative bone, but that's still almost as ridiculous as the pineapple not having a purpose anywhere. Just one big joke. The pineapple never had a point. I don't know if the pineapple got ate in the end, but yeah.
You said earlier it did.
Well, in game you ate it.
Out of game.
Out of game, I have no clue what happened to it.
I feel as though the staff of St. Breville's is gonna like find the pineapple somewhere.
I know I'd
like,
left it in the
"Welp."
top room, in the dining room, and then it had been moved to the kitchen. At some point, and I was like, I'm not taking a pineapple home. That was annoying to take it, so I'm not going to take it home. So I don't know what happened to that pineapple. I don't know if somebody decided to take it home or chop it up earlier in the day or whatever. But yeah, it was just very much there. I don't know.
I hope so. I hope the pineapple found a good home in the bellies of people who like pineapple.
Yeah. But yeah, it was great. And then I think when we were doing the banquet the next day, I can't remember when it got referenced, but someone said a pineapple is a tropical fruit, and like all like 7 of us burst out laughing, and everyone else was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was a good moment. Because it's those sorts of long-lasting...
7 people in on a joke that the rest of the 50 of us just did like, what?
Yeah. I think it was good as well, just because like I would get questioned when I was like carrying the pineapple around. What's the pineapple for? Why do you have a pineapple? A pineapple? What's that for? And I'm like, it's tropical fruit, innit? It's for D&D. And they were like, okay.
Which explains nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that's useless as an explanation.
Yeah.
They know that a pineapple is a tropical fruit, and they have no earthly idea what one has to do with D&D. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, and yeah, it was just a good time, and it's those sort of things that, like, I think it really, like, the pineapple incident really demonstrates the ability to have little in-jokes and stuff like that. That is what D&D is. It's just in-joking until you die. Like, yeah, no, I had a good time, and I would DM for all those people again. I may even run more than one game next time, perhaps.
I think I want in on Phoebe's next Call of Cthulhu game, because that looked rad.
Absolutely. She'll probably end up having to run multiple of those, I would imagine. Like, I would imagine she's probably going to end up having to run
It was a very, very popular game.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, legendary sessions now. Like, both Honey Heist and Call of Cthulhu are now, like Critter Castle, like, musts. I think as well your game,
I've actually heard, like, some people say that, like, the Jester one-shots Under Hills and Unicorns is, like, now, has to be trademarked with the Critter Castle things. Like, there can't be a Critter Castle without someone running that game.
It is good, which does neatly bring us on to your game, Maxi.
I'm not even sure if there's, like, a lot to say about, what I did at Critter Castle in that regard. I think it's, like, a really easy and it explains itself pretty well.
I think it's a really interesting one, because the concept, essentially, especially for the first one, was that you could come in as cosplayer or in character and play a character. So the first one, you had Maxi in pretty much full jester gear, like blue paint and everything, like like full jester gear, and
I looked great.
I
felt great.
Yeah, and like very, very good and brilliant jester impression as well. For those of you who do not listen to Critical Role, are not interested in Critical Role, we are very sorry. This portion, the segment of the podcast, will alienate viewers.
I mean, if I'm like already sticking up images of my cards on the video version, I guess I'm just probably going to stick up like an image of Jester, because they have like official art now for Critical Role, so just stick that up and be like, this is the character. Possibly Maxi as well, because then there are photographs of your cosplay, aren't there? But
there are
negotiate
photographs
that later on.
But I think most people around the table was... I think it was the first one on Friday night, wasn't it? So everyone wasn't super super
Drunk?
prepared for it. Like, everyone was tired from traveling still, so it was this, if you want to get...
Yeah, which is like why I made sure that the next the session that we just had in February was like on the Saturday evening instead. So like, okay, it's not immediately after everyone gets there, so like no one is going to be as wiped out, and maybe I'll have some people who will join me in the cosplay aspect of this.
Yeah. Which, yeah. Absolutely they
So
did.
I'll like go over the explanation of like what I did basically. So there is a bunch of one shots that Critical Role runs around their main campaigns, and one of them was a one shot where Travis Willingham was called the Grog one shot, where he ran I think it was Bunions and Flagons, where he DM'd as his character Grog, and like did this like cobbled together game, and it was really good, and I was very much inspired by it, and I was like, what if I did a game where I dressed up as Jester, I acted as Jester, and I ran Jester's made up childhood game Under Hills and Unicorns for members of either people she had just grabbed off the street for the purposes of anyone who didn't want to act in character, because I didn't want to alienate any people who weren't comfortable with like either cosplaying or acting in a as like an NPC or a PC from the main Critical Role games. So they were just like someone I dragged off and roped into my game. Or, as I said, NPCs and PCs from both campaigns of Critical Role. And I'll be honest, I am still hoping for someone to do Vecna. Or the Briarwoods. I would really, really be down for like someone to just be like, so the villains of Critical Role 1 have sat down with this teeny little blue tiefling to play her childhood game of Under Hills and Unicorns. I'm like, I'd be so into that. But anyway, for the first game, I had quite a few people who like were just Mighty Nine players, and like one person who was also another Jester that I like passed off as Jester also wants to be a player too, so she has invoked duplicity. So whatever happens, Jester wins in this game. She's a DM or a player. And in the next game, the one that just happened, everyone was members of Vox Machina using the character sheets that are available on D&D Beyond of the Mighty Nine players. So you had Percival, and he was playing Caduceus, like using like Caduceus' stats and character sheets, but like playing Caduceus as himself and like trying to do the impression and like being a bit disparaging about Caduceus' like intelligence being so low. And the entire time I'm just like talking about how as Jester I'm just like going like, oh, these guys are all my best friends and I really want you to play them. And it was just like it was a really good energy, and I didn't give out a pineapple, but I gave out cupcakes.
It's true, you did.
And Jester's one-shots are primarily designed to get as very saccharinely cute and wild as fuck as possible. So it's just like, what is everything that Jester loves? And obviously it's like pastries and unicorns. So I'm like building one-shots around not just that, but also like shout out references to things in the show and stuff like that. At one point, because there was a bit in the Critical Role show where like the Mighty Nine were having a conversation about like who had the best penis, and well,
Hold
essentially,
on. Hang on, we have what?
Yeah, there was like literally a conversation in which like they were specifically asking Jester who she thought like had the best who had the best penis she'd ever seen, and Jester went, Molly's was pretty nice. It was a nice color and shape and everything. So I literally then decided in the very first Just a One Shot that I ever did was that there was a tree that you hugged to like stop it from crying from being alone, and it would grow purple penis-shaped fruits that if consumed would give you hit points back. And like one of the players was like was pretending to be Bo and was just like, Jester. I was like, yes. Like, Jester, seriously? I don't know what you're talking about. Just the entire time. Like, it's just a lot of fun. And the whole goal of these games was to just get everyone to laugh. Like, that was it. I just wanted everyone to have, like, a really good time and, like, have lots of jokes peppered throughout it. I think one of the players in this game that just happened was literally writing down all of the weird, funny shit I was saying. It's like quotes that she could bring out at like any point. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
This is like the people who go to Critter Castle are to an extent a reasonably tight-knit group, which means that you can do callbacks like that and actually have them land, right?
Mm.
Which is not to say, by the way, that I don't do shit like that. There are a number of characters actually who have become quite beloved by like campaign players who I started in like QCon things like Clarence. You'll love Clarence, right?
Love Clarence.
Oh, yeah. Clarence is great.
The very ill-mannered Cockney Cambion, who is Clarence like comes from the Arcade Blanchard QCon thing. His name was a pun, and then I brought him back because I enjoyed being him so much because he's so bad-tempered all the time.
Used as a battery pack for a lich.
Yeah, I was like,
so angry.
What's been happening to Clarence after he's like basically being hunted down by every demon lord? And it's like, hey, he's fallen in with the wrong crowd, and he's being used to power the crystal maze, basically. And yeah, it's like I'm trying to think if there are any other. I might do something with those illithids, but I guess like Clarence would be the main one. But also, like, generally speaking, Maxi at least is in my games, so I like will have those characters turn up at some point and do something, and then it'll be a callback for Maxi if nobody else. But it really seems like at Critter Castle you could have the same people multiple times and be able to like have callbacks to jokes like that. And that sounds really cute and fun.
Yeah, there's people have said to me, people who were in my second session, that they're already talking to me about like the next time I run Underhills and Unicorns and the ideas that they already have. One of the ideas was that we were thinking that for your next game of Underhills and Unicorns, Maxi, us two would cosplay as the Gentleman and the Ruby of the Sea, so that Jester literally runs a D&D game for her parents.
Oh.
That'd be cute.
Yeah.
That's real cute and fun. I really like the playing the character you're cosplaying idea, because a lot of the time I've never cosplayed, right? I've thought about it a couple of times. There have been a couple of like things that I wanted to cosplay, but I have like a weird relationship at the moment with costume and my own identity and stuff. So I've sort of held off on it. Additionally, it's very expensive at times.
Yeah. It is.
So I really like the idea of like going to an event like this and being able to do more with your cosplay rather than just standing around and having photographs taken of you. Which presumably you also did some of, but like being able to actually cosplay instead of just like wearing a costume kind of sounds like that's a fun thing for you to put on for these people.
I think that the second one I was pretty comfortable to just, because I think in the first one I played the Traveller, who was playing a paladin of the Traveller.
Yeah.
And I think I in the
You didn't really know anyone. It was also the first night, and I knew that you were being a lot quieter than you would ordinarily be.
Yeah. And then I decided next year, I'm just going to be the Traveller again. That was fine. And then I think I'm going to check my messages because I want to see when Mike messaged me.
Yeah, by the way, I had no idea that, like, I was the last person to know as the DM that you guys had decided that, like, hey, we're gonna, like, just be Vox Machina players and using, like, the Mighty Nine stats as our player characters.
Oh, wait, sorry. So that wasn't a thing you planned. That was a thing that the players decided they were going to do.
They fucking sprung that on me. Like, I had already, like, thought that they had, like, this, like, one of the players was a repeat player from last time who had been Caduceus, and she already had, like, a character who was a druid called Aloe, who literally only needed just, like, one level up. And then, like, I think she ended up being Lady Vexalia, and played as Bo.
So like the first time there were some people who were like, we had like a Gilmore who was playing like a Vax.
Yeah,
XP.
I fucking loved that.
And then there was a Vex also playing a Vax XP, and they were like, hang on a fucking minute. And there was Bo who was playing. I think Bo was playing herself because Bo. That's a very Bo thing to do. You know, we're all like playing like, you know, disparate characters and stuff like that. It was very fun. But then this time, Mike, I think a few days beforehand, is like, hey, so I've got an idea. And I was like, I don't know. That sounds like I'd be really nervous. I don't know Campaign 1 that well. And then I was kind of like, you know what, though? I know Grog quite well because I watched a lot of like his highlights and stuff like that. So maybe I would be Grog. So that would be Grog playing Ford. Maxi has no idea this is going on. So meanwhile, you've got Josh as like, I'm going to dress up as Percy, and I'm going to play Caduceus, which was incredibly funny, actually. And it was incredibly funny as well being Grog playing Ford, because those two characters are so different from each other. You know, and then you've got Mike, who's Scanlan, who's playing... No, and so it was all very funny, and it was good. But you didn't know, I think, until about the couple of days before it happened. I think I told you on the drive.
I think I found out, like, I think I found out, like, literally, on the day. Like, I remember that you suggested on the drive that, like, this, someone was talking about this idea, but I don't think anything will happen of it. And then literally, like, everyone turns around and says, like, okay, we're going to be Vox Machina.
Yeah, Vox Machina playing the Mighty Nine, and you were like, oh, okay.
So, like, then I had to also spin that, like, as Jester, in terms of, like, why would Vox Machina have Mighty Nine character sheets and have to try and act like the Mighty Nine without, like, any context towards them? And then I thought, obviously Jester wants her friends to be involved in this, and decided that, like, hey, we were pirates once, and never, like, we stopped being pirates, and I kind of, like, want to go and imagine the sort of adventures that we would have had. So can you all random people, who I've just met, who are proficient adventurers, please play as my friends in this simulated pirate game?
Yeah, it was good crack. It was a good time. I was very much jammed between the Radiator and Josh, and I was not very comfortable for most of that session physically.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was really warm and hot, and I was very squidged in, which is why I kept like moving and like standing up and stuff. And I think in the end I ended up just like crouching on the chair in order to be comfy. But it, you know, that's not on anyone's fault.
I think you also saw the fact that, like, I think I stood up a lot and revealed myself as a DM who stands.
Yeah, I was like, when you first did it, I was like, oh, she's a DM
Maxi
that stands!
I'm like, it's the best position for me. I, like, hate sitting behind the screen.
Oh my god. I was just like, oh, she's a DM that stands!
Oh, we haven't played together physically, have we, Beth?
No.
I am also a DM that stands. I'm not a DM that stands all the time, which is what Maxi sounds like, but I am a DM who stands and then like comes around the table to look at like you and what you're doing.
What? I'm very much a DM that sits. I'm a sitter.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't stand for, like, my main campaign on Sunday. We both just had to sit on my bed.
Yes. And very cozy it was too.
So I run a game on Sundays regularly. I do alternating Sundays with Matt. And this was like the first time I've ever had a player of that game in my own home having to like watch me DM and stuff, and also that there are just certain things that we just can't keep away from one another. And what was really, really funny was when you asked me when we were driving down together for the Critter Castle, like, are you still going to run a game on Sunday? And I was like, yeah, I'm planning to. And you were like, you absolute madwoman!
I mean,
How?
I certainly, but this is going to date this episode. So let's talk about Storm Kira. We were all in Wales at the time. We were all travelling up, and we had all thought that Saturday was going to be the worst day, which was okay because we'd mostly be indoors, and the rest of the people doing photography would have been in Claywell Cave, so it was fine. And then, as it turned out, Sunday was the worst time, and I wanted to travel back a bit later on Sunday because I wanted to spend more time with Maxi, whom is my friend, and I love her very much. And all of the trains ended up getting cancelled, and I ended up having an impromptu sleepover at Maxi's, and then travelling back on the Monday, I was like, I'm not going to run a game, I'm too tired. Fuck public transportation. I do not have the spoons to run a game and arrive home. So, yeah.
For those worried about Beth, the fun thing about that was that the specific train station that was giving her grief over the storm is right next to me, which means that if she'd made it that far before getting her train cancelled, she would also have been accounted for. Like, I would have nagged my folks to take her in for a night.
I didn't know that, but I was like, if I get on the train, I'm going to be stranded in Manchester. And honestly, the idea of having a sleepover at Maxi sounded incredibly fun, actually. Anyway, I was kind of like, okay, it sucks that I don't get to go home at night, but also I get to have a sleepover, which is something that I have never ever done. Even as like a little girl, I never had a sleepover at my friend's house.
It probably like wasn't the sleepover of your dreams because like I was like, you have my room, I have to be up at 6 a.m. for work, so I'm gonna crash out on my sofa.
And I was like, what? No, this isn't how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to stay up late watching spooky movies and talking about our crushes. This isn't what it's supposed to be like.
Beth, I'm a working woman
I
who
know.
like has to be up at 6 a.m.
I was like, but
also, like, you literally just came from an event that is essentially a group of grown adults living the dream of having a mass sleepover.
You know what? Yeah, actually, that dorm, that was so fun. I think it was the Saturday night we all just stayed up talking about, like, my game and, like, the relationship drama in it and stuff like that. I adore hanging out with nerds, and I'm going to do it more in the future.
Maxi.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about QCon? Do you have any concept of what you did?
I have my notes still, and I will talk about it much more briefly than I have talked about QCon in previous years.
It's fair. It's been a while. I'd sort of, to be honest, listeners, I'd sort of given up on doing an episode for this QCon, but when I heard that Beth had got some like convention style actual play DMing experience at Critter Castle, I thought, well, we can fold that into an episode together, and I think this has been very fun. But if you want to talk about what you did at QCon, Maxi, and then maybe we'll close it out.
So I finally got to run a game set in the third world of my tri-world setting. And the third world is the sci-fantasy setting, which I was really, really excited about because it requires a lot more homebrewing on my behalf to like fit sci-fi and new mechanics and stuff like that. Implementing blasters and it has a very strong Knights of the Old Republic feel, I've been told.
Which is honestly good, because, like, I think if you're going to turn D&D 5e into, like, a sci-fi space opera type thing, then giving it a science fantasy Star Wars feel is probably better than... Because I'm conscious that we talked all of last episode about forcing 5e to be things that it isn't, and how I personally don't like that, and Beth's not that fond of it. But I do think if you're going to do sci-fi D&D, Star Wars, particularly KOTOR as like a sort of aesthetic base, definitely makes a lot of sense for like how that would be managed, right? Because it is sci-fi, but it's also kind of sword and sorcery fantasy.
Yeah, because obviously, like, I still wanted the implementation of magic and sword fighting and stuff like that, and exploration of different parts of this system, which I just thought was like really, really cool. And I ran 2 games as usual, and both of them like also followed on from each other. So the first game was called The Blessed and the Blasphemous, which was like a reference to The Fast and the Furious. Because it was literally like, it's gonna be fucking Tron and you're gonna have to race. Which is like the most fun I had like had in a while at that time. And of like, I had to come up with vehicle mechanics and stuff, and I think I was very, very lucky that Descent of Avernus was like around about that time. So like Descent into Avernus like has a very Mad Max feel and like has vehicles and stuff. So I was like when I was like implementing and creating vehicles, I wanted them to like have different abilities. Like some were faster than others, but like really weak. So I'd like a lower constitution. Others were tough. Others like were literally the shit that you could get from Wacky Racers with like all these weird little tricks to it. It became very Mario Kart pretty quickly, actually. And it was so much fun. And the premise of it was that like it took place on Kaizomph, in the city of Notama, where like battle races was a big thing. These like Tron styled battle races were like huge there, very popular. And for the grand prize, the shard of Quorum was like being offered up, which was like a shard of dark matter. And someone had infiltrated the race under false pretenses, and though someone was the cult of Zotmarva, who are like, if you're fans of New Phyrexia and the Phyrexians in general, they are bad news. They are like biomechanical horrors who worship a mad robot goddess. And she does want to like generally convert organic life into weird combinations of flesh and so the cult of Zotmarva, they were going to like use this shard of dark matter to like power potentially an army's worth of their machinery and equipment, which is like really, really bad because like they had tried to take over at one point, like 3,000 years ago, and failed and were pushed to the Outer Rim. And but they are still out there, and there is like thankfully there is like a protection and from the Gobelak zone, which is like mainly a collection of lands in which hobgoblins are just like the main army there, and like really, really hate Zotmarva and everything that she does, and will happily like fight for the rest of their lives. Her cultists and her machines and everything like that. But somehow these cultists have gotten into the race to try and like win this shard. And that's where the players come in, because they're not good guys, but they're not bad guys either. They are part of a mafia known as the Phaeteron family, and they're like the lower members in it, but like they should be able to handle it. They're kids. They're like in their like 20s or something, and they're eager to impress the higher ups of their affiliated gang. And they've been entered into this race. So they got like, it was really cool. They got to choose their driver options, and I like introduced some characters, and like they were given a description as to what their forte was in terms of driving, and like they got to customize the vehicle. I think at one point they attached a miniature machine gun to it. And then they like raced off, and it wasn't just the cult of Zotmarva who were like disguised as well. They like had a complete illusion over themselves. But it was also like other racers with their other like own themed cars and stuff, and it was then the players' own paranoias of just which one do you think are the cultists? And they just decided that like the richest, most asshole guy there was probably it. But I think it was more to do with the fact that he was a rich asshole who was just trying to lord it over them, and they just didn't like him, so they wanted to, in particularly, destroy his purple Corvette-styled battle wagon. And, they ended up having these cool, like, rooftop fights on top of their cars, because, I didn't want to run a game where one of them had to be delegated as the driver. Like, even though, like, one of them seemed really up for the idea. Like, they were deciding before I introduced the concept of, like, you get your own driver, you get, like, a professional driver, and you will be on top of the car and, like, knocking off opponents from, like, the other tops of their cars, and you'll be strapped in and stuff like that. And but one of them was just like, well, can I be co-driver? And I'm like, the driving part is probably like the worst mechanic here. Like, you want to be able to use all of your abilities and stuff. And
I guess that person probably like didn't have a huge frame of reference for exactly how much you'd fleshed out the vehicle mechanics. It could be that like the driving part was just as fun as anything else, but it had like a completely different flavor to it. But that seems to be that's not what you did.
Mm. And I like used a bunch of different stuff for like I use like completely different classes and homebrewed materials and subclasses and stuff. I used two of my own, which was the Void Touch Sorcerer and the College of Rock Bard, which were like, they are specifically for the Aetherune setting. I really enjoy them. And obviously, like, the College of Rock Bard does, like, a lot with thunder damage as well.
Nice.
It really sells it with thunder damage. I also used a homebrewed class, which is, I want to shout out to Stephen Vorpal, who you'll probably, like, put a link to the Twitter of in the description, who made the Prism class, which is like this warrior of light who uses light-based attacks by manipulating it. And it was like some really cool abilities there. I specifically used the Halo facet of the Prism class. And I
can definitely drop a link to that if closer to the time during editing you let me know where his Twitter is, and we can send some people his way.
Yeah. I've had a lot of fun with the Prism class. It's really, really good. I also used a rogue class called the Jumper, which is like kind of based off Tracer from Overwatch and came from Mage Press Matter, Mage Hand Press's Matters book, which they kickstarted, and it's really good.
Cool. I might drop a link to that as well then.
And, well, basically, with the very first game, they had a lot of fun. They did, like, loop-de-loops. They, like, nearly got shot out of the racetrack. They definitely crashed a Mad Max-styled dwarven woman's vehicle and blew it up, which was metal as fuck, to be honest. But they, and then they, like, duked it out with the revealed Cult of Zotmarva's, car, and they won the shard. They had the shard delivered to their contact within the Phaedron family, who was like, thank you very much, I'll make sure that this goes to the right people. And when they were, like, celebrating that victory, just, like, walking away and stuff like that, they are approached by a mysterious woman, who, unfortunately, like, the session was coming to a close, but I was, like, still, trying to get this out to them, that, like, this woman comes to you, and she's flanked by, like, these two larger people wearing, like, this kind of space marine, body armor, and, she says that, like, basically that they raced really, really well, and, she represents people who would be very, very interested in acquiring those skills, and, one of the players went, say no more, we're in, and I went, oh. So what had happened was that, this was supposed to be a kidnapping in which that woman and her space marines were part of the Syngarsis Order, who are basically slavers. And, they specifically, capture people who are, like, who have skills, and, like, brainwash them and, maximize that skill set and, like, sell them off to the highest bidder, sort of thing. They're, like, really, really bad, terrible people. And, just, like, it ended with this, like, one player just going, say no more, we're all in. And I'm like, you idiots have just sold yourselves into slavery, but they don't know. Like, no one knows what the Syngarsis Order looks like. They are, like, very clandestine and hidden because slavery is illegal. Anyway, so that actually brings us on to the second session with, it's back with the Phaedron family, but this time you are higher leveled PCs. You are, in fact, like, just outside of the inner circle of the Phaedron family, and guess what? Those kids who got kidnapped in the first game were your kids. They are the lower members of the Phaedron family who you were mentoring. And, like, obviously to reflect that, I used basically the same subclasses, for these new characters, but at a higher level. Because, like, they were, like, specifically mentoring the younger generation in their skill set. And, but this also meant that, this higher ranked level of the Phaedron family got access to, like, their own starship, and, like, all these cool weaponry and stuff like that. And the best thing that I implemented in this, just because I really enjoyed playing this character, was Mizran. So Mizran was a AI that they all, like, wore an earpiece that allowed them to talk to Mizran, and Mizran, like, appeared to them, like, once basically the earpiece linked in properly and could, like, manifest physically as, like, an illusion in front of them. And, like, he appeared to be a human man of, like, Bangladeshi descent, with what looked like LEDs, like, under his skin. And he was very polite and reserved, and Mizran was actually like an acronym that stood for Magical Interfacing System and Restorative Automated Network. And he would like help guide them through, because the Phaedron family had actually tracked down where the Singasis Order had taken their kids, and it was to a hidden station that everyone thought was derelict called the Fate Line Station. And with a cloaked starship and their trusty AI Mizran, these 6 very pissed off veterans of the Phaedron family sneak aboard the station to absolutely wreck everything. Like, they even blow up the station after they leave because of just, like, I was really impressed with, like, these players, of just how invested emotionally they, like, seemed to get across with their characters, just being, like, taking this as a personal offense from the Singasis Order to have messed with them, but also to seem as though they genuinely cared about, like, the kids. I was just, like, at one point they capture alive one of the gods of the Singasis Order, and, like, just begin horrifically torturing him, actually. And, but the one who was taking the lead on that torture was, a GIF monk. He was mentoring a half-GIF monk, of the Way of the Astral Self, who I had decided that, that is your literal son. Like, he is literally your boy. And so he was very, very into this whole, like, where's my son? What have you done with my son? And, like, he just tore through the entire station like a hurricane. And, they fought this robotic Lich Queen at the center of it, which was a really cool GLaDOS fight. But I was, like, really, really pressed for time with that, so, like, I had to nerf her a little bit. That was actually my fault, just because of, I got my times mixed up as to when I was supposed to start the session, and I was a bit late. But, Ellie was very understanding and, like, told me that they, wouldn't start packing away, in the room that I was in until, like, last. So I managed to, like, get through the fight and, like, have it be completely resolved. But,
Ellie's
yeah.
great. Can we just, like, briefly... I don't know if Alyssa's listening to this, but she's fucking great. She was really good to me that year in a number of small ways that I really appreciate, and I've never met anyone who's had who knows who she is, who's had a bad word to say about how she runs RPGs at QCon.
Yeah. She was, like, really, really understanding, and, like, I was incredibly apologetic about, like, my own fuck-up with, like, not realizing that the time difference was a thing, because I thought that, I don't know why, like, maybe the time did change, and I just, like, wasn't aware of it, but I thought that the afternoon game start time would be the same as the previous day's afternoon game start time, which was like 2:30, and on the day that I was running, it got pushed back to 2:00. So I was, like, walking through the park quite leisurely on my way to, like, set up, thinking I had plenty of time, and then I get a call from Ali saying, like, is everything okay? Are you, like, still running? Because we've got your players here. And I was like, what? Oh no. And then I, like, ran through the park with my laptop and everything. Just
Park's nice,
everything
though.
always happens. Yeah, it's a really nice park.
The botanical gardens in Belfast are nice. So yeah, that then.
Yeah,
Man,
that
I
was
think it might
pretty
be.
much it.
Yeah.
You know-
Well, that's our. Sorry, Beth. Did you have?
Yeah, I'm just, I think what we've learnt here today is, there are lots of things that you can bring to the table when you DM for a group like this at a convention. You don't have to do what Alex always does, which is almost kill yourself. You can just have a nice normal time like me with a few zany gags and stuff. Or you can just do something very creative and performative. Or you can just have a nice normal, you don't have to have a gimmick. You can have a gimmick if you want, but it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm going to work incredibly hard and almost kill myself. This sounds like I'm slating you. I'm not. You work very hard.
I mean, I did say I'm not going to do that anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Like, two brushes was enough for me.
Yeah, like, I think the second time, like, Death in all his hooded glory, he comes into your hotel room and goes, look, you can't keep doing this. Like,
it was not anywhere near as bad as 50 fucking character sheets, but it didn't amount to the relief that I'd hoped for, I guess. And I was like, I can't keep doing these, but if I don't do these, I don't want to run 5th edition anymore. I want to do other stuff. And to be honest, I kind of want to do that anyway. Which is a great segue into end of session stuff.
Absolutely.
End of session and end of episode stuff. We would do like ads and things. So I guess the biggest piece of housekeeping to bring out right at the front is we're a proper big boy podcast now.
We're all grown up. Look, Ma, we made it.
We have an RSS feed and everything, and you can find us on iTunes and on Spotify and on Stitcher. And I don't think we're going to get a lot of new fans in through those avenues, at least at the beginning. But there is a number of... I've already looked at the stats, and there's like a non-zero number of people coming in from avenues that seem unlikely to be just people who already know about the podcast checking out the new hotness. So if you found this podcast via an audio-only stream... We have a YouTube channel. Primarily, that YouTube channel is devoted to the podcast. There's episodes of the podcast with a big still image up, basically. I think one of them has like some additional stuff in it, and then there's this one as well, which I'm presumably going to do that in. But more pertinently, that's also where you could go for the moment to find like cut content, little mini mashup episodes. I don't know if I'm going to put those on the RSS feed as bonus episodes. I might do that. But it is also where you will go to find our actual play streams. I will put a link to the YouTube channel in the show notes for this episode, if I remember. But if you check out our Twitter at @BardsCast, that has basically everything that you need for everything House of Bards, basically. You will be able to find it there. So if there's something that we mentioned that isn't in the show notes, go and find it there. Similarly, if you're watching on YouTube and you didn't know, hey, you can get our podcast on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and in podcast readers that draw from one of those feeds or from general RSS. All right, so yes, I think that's everything. Anything else, obviously, will be in an update on @BardsCast. I think I mentioned last time that. Oh, I mentioned in a YouTube update. We have @BardsCast as a Twitter rather than anything more appropriate on account of how all of the other handles that made better sense to pick were taken by accounts that tweeted once in 2011 about football.
Yeah.
So as soon as Twitter figures out how to end of life abandoned accounts without desecrating the social media accounts of the dead, we're probably going to try and hop onto one of those. But for the moment, it is @BardsCast, and you can go there. You will see our nice red and yellow logo, and you'll be able to see what exactly we are up to at any given point. That is also where you should go if you don't want to follow the YouTube for updates on the actual play streams, if you want to watch those. Thank you all for listening to this actual play update from House of Bards, which is probably what the episode is going to end up being called. And we will see you all next time, which will hopefully be prompt. I have no idea what we're going to do another episode about, but there are ideas in the tank. We'll be able to go have a look. We've not done this in a while.
Until next time, I've been Alex.
I've been Beth.
I was Maxi.
So, yes, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.